What's up, guys? It's your boys Wokey back with another of the Chris Watts videos. This one is going to be the Nick Thayer one, where we have the interview with him, with Amanda Thayer and Nick being separated, not the news interview that they did together. I definitely want to get into this because who knows if there's a little bit of piece of information that we might need or whatever have you. And you guys have been begging me, wanting me to do all these different interviews and so forth like that, reacting and such, and putting my 2 cents on it. So, with that being said, before we go any further, if you guys could do me a solid favor and subscribe to my YouTube channel by hitting that wiper icon down the bottom right, hit that bell icon next to it, so when I do post videos like this one, you guys will get that little ring notification that I've posted that video, and then you guys can watch, comment, like, and share. And again, I thank you guys so very much for the love and support. Also, make sure you guys go over to Footsteps of Murder. Go give them some love by doing the exact same thing. Subscribe, comment, like, and share. You know the deal. And with that being said, let's get into the video.
The 15th of August 2018. FBI agent John
The 15th of August. Okay, so that's the day he was convicted.
L. Hause interviews Nicholas Thayer. Nicholas Thayer, hereafter referred to as Nick, was interviewed at his residence. After being advised of the identity of the interviewing agent and the nature of the interview, Nick provided the following information. Nick is employed as a media director for Prob Incorporated. Nick obtained a high school diploma. Nick's wife Amanda Thayer, hereafter referred to as Amanda, and Shanann Watts, set up a playdate for the kids in approximately April 2017.
Also, if you guys did not know, Nick also ran with Chris to work out and stuff like that. They were really like buddy kind of thing. They just kind of worked out with each other. I know Amanda Thayer and Nick Thayer were going to watch the kids while Shanann and Chris were supposed to go to Aspen together the following weekend before they were murdered. And for some reason, some stupid reason, there is a lot of, or not, I shouldn't say a lot, there's a few channels that are blaming the Thayers. I don't know why. I am shocked to say the least, but there are channels that are blaming the Thayers, including Nicole Atkinson. They're blaming the Watts murders. That was an inside job, or they were blaming the Ruseks as an inside job. Like, we're supposed to be looking at Nichol here, and they're looking at people that have no motive whatsoever in these murders.
Nick met Chris Watts at that playdate at the park in Frederick. That summer, the Thayers saw them almost every weekend at each other's homes and going out to dinner. In the fall of 2017, Chris started getting into running. Nick and Chris ran at times through the winter on weekends. Chris said he was working out at the Frederick Recreation Center. They didn't share much personal talk. Chris was self-contained and didn't offer much. Nick was also friends with Shanann. They all got along. Nick and Chris mostly communicated through texting about going for runs, sports in general, or making plans for the weekends. There were not many phone calls. Nick and Amanda moved to Thornton in June 2018. The Thayers saw Shanann and Chris less. Shanann and the kids went to North Carolina for 6 weeks in June 2018. Chris joined them in North Carolina during their last week there, and they all flew back together. Nick and Amanda saw Chris on the 4th of July at the fireworks show in Thornton.
And they went to Nichols.
Nick asked Chris a question along the lines of, "What's it like to be a bachelor?" Chris responded that it was weird being in an empty home, and that he was working out all the time.
Yeah, okay.
Chris said that Shanann got upset
Working out, doing some butt stuff
because he missed one of her phone calls. Chris added that any time he's working out, he runs upstairs when she calls, and he hides that he's doing stuff without Shanann and the girls. Nick had no other indication from Chris about the status of their relationship other than those examples. Nick thought that perhaps Shanann and Chris were married in 2012. Nick stated that he and Chris didn't see each other much and didn't talk much. However, they both signed up for a running race in September 2018. Chris sent Nick a text message photograph of his race shirt and bib number. The two exchanged a few texts regarding the upcoming race. When Chris and Shanann got back from North Carolina, Shanann and Amanda talked for about 45 minutes. Amanda told Nick that Chris and Shanann weren't doing well in their marriage. Amanda asked if Nick saw the post Shanann made about Celeste in North Carolina. To which Nick said he had. Nick and Amanda thought maybe that issue was part of the problem. Nick was aware that Shanann didn't get along with Chris's parents. Nick received a text from Amanda while he was at work. Amanda told him that Shanann wanted them to watch the kids while Shanann and Chris went away for the weekend of the 17th of August 2018. Nick said okay. Nick and Amanda got back from their Kentucky trip on Monday, the 13th of August 2018 around 3 or 4 p.m. Nick texted Chris to see if Chris wanted to do some more runs before the September run. Nick provided the following texts from his...
See, what really bugs me the most is this man had it all. Yeah, okay, he had some financial burden, but he had friends. He had family. He had a great job. He had a great wife and 2 loving kids, and probably a 3rd kid was going to love him very much so, was going to carry on the family name. He had a vehicle. He had food on the table. Like, what pisses me off the most is this guy had what every guy that's obviously a man wants in life. They want a stable house. They want a loving wife and kids that are like, I wouldn't say adore them. Like, I love that my kids come home and when I come home, my kids come rushing and, Dad, give me a hug. Like, there are guys that are begging to have this. And yet Chris just is like, oh, I don't want this anymore because I think Nichol Thayer is super hot and sexy. And like, he was 32 or 33, acting like a 15-year-old or a college student, wanting to have all this fun. And yet it just pisses me off.
Cell phone. Monday 4:07 p.m. Hey man. We just got back into town. When can you run? Chris responded, not sure man. I can't find Shanann or the kids. Haven't heard from them all day. Cops are here.
Messed up.
I will keep you posted. Nick responded, whoa. What? That is crazy man. Is there anything I can do? Chris responded, I don't know man.
See, how can you blame the Thayers too anyways when the Thayers were gone? They were in Kentucky. Again, no reason. The only reason why they're stating that the Thayers could have been involved in some shape or form, which again is ridiculously stupid, is that the Thayers let Chris stay at their house, not the night after the murders, but the following night, across from their daughter, had pizza, talked to him and stuff like that. They didn't know that they had a murder in their home. And then when they found out that he murdered, they were disgusted. They were appalled and so forth like that. So again, how can these YouTube channels blame these guys when they had no motive? They weren't in the area, but you have Nichol Thayer in the area doing all these things, and they're just like, oh, let's blame the Thayers instead of Thayer. Does that make sense?
It's very odd right now. Nick responded, we can head up there. Bring you some food. We are here for you. Nick and Amanda went to Chris's house and rang the bell. Chris answered the door. In describing Chris's appearance, Nick stated, it wasn't Chris. Nick stated that Chris appeared different, overwhelmed, like, what is going on?
Everybody knew it.
At that point, the cops were gone. Nick, Amanda, and Chris stood inside by the front door. Nick and Amanda were asking Chris questions about what happened, but Nick could not remember exactly what they asked. Chris told Nick and Amanda the following. Shanann and Chris were having marital issues. Nick stated that Amanda spoke up and said that Shanann had told her about the marital issues.
She's a friend.
That morning when Chris woke up for work.
Because usually you confide in your friends, you ask them, what would you do, and so forth.
He told Shanann that he wanted to separate. Chris told her before he went to work because he wanted to tell her in person rather than by text or phone. Chris left for work.
Which is the worst way. I've been sent a text message on breakup, but
Nick stated Chris did not comment on how Shanann was doing when he left. When Chris was at work, Nichol began texting him that she couldn't get a hold of Shanann, and that Nichol was at their house. Chris headed for home. On the way, he called the girls' school. He was told they hadn't checked in. Chris told the school to keep the girls on the wait list. When Chris got home, the cops were there and did a walk around. The cops came back with a warrant for a more in-depth search. The cops offered Chris a chance to walk around and search with them, but he said he'd wait outside. Nick, Amanda, and Chris continued talking at the kitchen table. Chris continued. Chris said the cops took Shanann's cell phone.
Good.
The neighbors showed the cops the security footage of him loading up his truck and leaving that morning, but the footage showed nothing after tart. The video doorbell didn't show anything. Chris saw a credit card charge.
I do not agree with that.
For a taxi cab, but didn't know anything else about it.
See, I don't know what this taxi cab is. This is the first I've ever heard about a taxi cab. It was apparently a taxi cab that was charged in their account the night that Shanann came home, but Shanann came home from Nicole Atkinson. So I'm just like, why is this? Because this is the second time we've heard about a taxi from Nicholas Thayer, because Amanda Thayer said the same thing. I think I really need to look into this taxi. What if Chris, no. I was thinking maybe Chris bought, like, how do I say this? Chris bought a taxi for Nichol to go home, or to come there to the house so that her vehicle was not tracked or whatever have you, which could leave us to believe that maybe she was in the house because the morning of the murders, Nichole's phone pinged that morning. Definitely very interesting on this taxi cab that he said to Amanda and Nick. Why would he tell them that he saw that on his phone app of his banking information? But again, how would he know that? Because Shanann had all the information about the financials and so forth like that. I feel like I'm onto something, but then again, I could be completely blowing this out of the water.
Chris didn't know what to think or do. Nick stated that while the three of them were brainstorming about what they could be doing, Chris stated, "Do I walk out into the field to look for someone?" Nick stated that Chris made no comments about the fact that Shanann was gone, but all her stuff was still there. When Amanda mentioned Shanann's items that were still in the house, Chris confirmed those items as being her phone, purse, wallet, wedding ring, car seats, and the kids' medicine. Based on all those items being left behind, Chris indicated that he thought Shanann just left. Nick stated that Chris was in the process of calling and texting Shanann's friends. Amanda said she heard about a potential Amber Alert. Chris said he had been contacting emergency rooms before Nick and Amanda arrived.
He wasn't
Nick stated that Chris seemed like he was just trying to process everything. He put his head down a lot.
He was trying to process what he could do with Nichol next.
He didn't know what to do. Chris told Nick he didn't want to talk to the news media because they might pry and turn his words around. Chris knew how it would look and he would be public enemy number one.
And he was.
Nick stated he was worried about that. Amanda invited Chris to stay at the Thayer's house. Chris said he wouldn't that night, but he would the next night. Amanda and Chris went
because he wanted to clean up and he wanted to get rid of whatever he could that night, and then he slept in the bed when he knew that Shanann and Bella and Celeste were deceased and in the ground and the barrels. And he wants to be out?
Went home around 7 or 8 p.m. When they got home, they texted Chris at 9:33 p.m. They told Chris they had stopped at McDonald's and the gas station at I-25 and Highway 52 to see if anyone there saw anything. Chris responded at 9:43 p.m., stating, "Thanks man." On Tuesday morning, the 14th of August 2018, Nick texted Chris to see if he was going to work. Chris said he didn't get much sleep and was going to stay home. Nick and Amanda took their daughter to school. Nick texted Chris at 8:30 a.m. to ask if he'd heard anything from the police. Chris responded, "Nothing yet." The two texted back and forth briefly. Nick and Amanda drove to Chris's house. On the way there, the news media started contacting them. When they arrived at Chris's house, they found Chris to be tired, not himself, and overwhelmed.
I wonder why.
The three sat at the kitchen table.
The same thing about Nichol Kessinger. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't concentrate. She couldn't focus. She couldn't remember. Same thing that Chris was doing. They both were in the hot seat. Only Chris is the one that got, flagged on it.
They talked about the possibility of Nick and Amanda talking to the media about the media talking to Chris.
And they did.
During the afternoon on Tuesday, Nick overheard a telephone call between Chris and either his mother or Shanann's mother.
Oh.
Chris made a comment along the lines of, "The longer this goes on, the more I worry that they might be hurt or in danger." Chris stated that he had received a text from a realtor on Monday night. Chris told Nick and Amanda that he and Shanann had talked about putting the house on the market. The house was too big and too much of a financial burden, and they wanted to downgrade. Chris said he wasn't sure if that is what made Shanann mad at him, although Chris hadn't talked about Shanann being mad before that moment.
So that's
Chris was wondering if that's what started all this. Chris made no mention about having any girlfriends. Nick and Amanda left Chris's house just before 4 p.m. in order to pick up their daughter from school. They offered to have Chris stay at their house that night. Chris agreed to it. Chris said he would be over in a little bit. When Nick and Amanda arrived at their home, Nick called Chris. Chris said he was coming over. Chris called Nick about 10 minutes later and said that Fox News was still in his front yard. Chris was concerned about how it would look if he was seen leaving his house with a bag of clothes.
Oh, why would that look bad? Oh, because he might be going to Kohl's?
At around 6:20 p.m., Nick texted Chris again. Chris said he was just leaving his house. Approximately 20 minutes later, Chris called. He told Nick that Frederick Police Department wanted him to come to talk to an FBI agent. Nick responded via text stating that he and Amanda would go there and offer support. Chris responded, "Thanks, man." Nick and Amanda went to the Frederick Police Department.
Waited 4 hours.
Chris came out around 11 p.m. Chris gave a brief summary of the interview, but they all decided to talk more once they got home. At the house, Chris said the interview was intense. He stated it was like being interviewed by 3 people, all by one person. He stated they had his phone and asked him all about stuff in his phone. They asked him about his weight loss, and who is she?
So how'd they have his phone if he was texting Nichol?
They would disappear for 15 minutes and would start over when they came back. He was getting the same questions in a different form. He was grilled and asked, "So why did you do it?" At the end of the interview, the agent told him he did a good job. Nick told Chris he had been texting with a private investigator friend. Nick gave Chris some lawyer contact information upon the advice of the private investigator. Chris was appreciative and went to bed. Chris said he was planning on going to work until his dad arrived. On Wednesday, the 15th of August 2018, Chris told Nick that his work told him not to come in. Chris left the house at 9:30 a.m. to go get his dad from the airport. Nick and Amanda went to work. Nick stated that he found it strange that Chris didn't know if Shanann had her Apple Watch since it wasn't in the charger. Nick knew that Shanann always wore her Apple Watch and always had her phone with her. Chris never made other comments, over time, about whether Shanann slept while wearing her Apple Watch. Nick stated that he would preserve all his calls and text data.
I feel like I'm still confused about this taxi that Chris keeps talking about. The only thing I can think of is this: Chris wanted to use that taxi as a way to get Nichol to the house without being seen. But then Betty, the next door neighbor, said she saw a smaller truck, silver truck, which was Nichols' work truck. I feel like I'm onto something, like things are kind of falling into place a little bit. Why else would there be a taxi ride? Because Shanann was already going to ride home with Nichol. Chris took her to the airport on Friday. I don't know. I would like to know what you guys think when it comes to this taxi. If I should look into the taxi thing. I don't know. I guarantee there's not going to be much information on the taxi that Chris said he saw on his bank information. But then it's another confusing thing. Because like I said before, Chris never said anything. Or wait, Chris didn't have any like connections with the financials. He just spent or asked if he could spend and stuff like that. Because Shanann was the one that controlled all the finances. So it's like, well, how did he know about this taxi that apparently was taken out? So I'm just a little puzzled. I'm going to look into it. But if you guys want me to make a video on it, it's not going to be a very long video because there's not much information on this Lyft or taxi service. Just leave it in the comments. Let me know who else you guys would like me to look at with an interview. There's definitely quite a few more. There's like 6 or 7 that we could look at. Nothing that would be like really tied into Chris as like Nichol or the close friends that she had. But definitely you guys have asked for all this content and I'm happy to oblige, but I want to make sure I'm doing the right videos for the right people that want these kind of videos. So if that makes sense. Again, I thank you guys for watching, being here, seeing my reaction, my 2 cents. Don't forget to subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Keep it real, keep it safe, and as always, keep nerding on, and we'll see you guys next time.